Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the English Learning Podcast. Today, we have an exciting and very practical topic for you: how to think in English. Thinking in English is one of the most effective ways to improve your fluency, and it can significantly boost your confidence when speaking. But the real question is, how can we get our minds to start thinking in English instead of translating from our native language?
That's right, Jason. It's something that many English learners struggle with. Most of us are used to translating everything we want to say into our own language before speaking in English, but this habit can slow us down. Today, we're going to share some great tips and strategies that can help you start thinking directly in English. And by the end of this episode, you'll have a clear idea of how to train your brain to think in English naturally.
Exactly. If you've ever wondered why native English speakers speak so effortlessly, it's because they think in English. So, in this episode, we'll break down why it's difficult to think in English, how to overcome that challenge, and practical steps you can take to start thinking in English yourself.
We've got lots to cover, so whether you're a beginner or someone who's been learning English for a while, stay tuned because these tips will be useful for all levels.
Let's dive in! Okay, let's start by understanding why thinking in English can be so challenging for many learners. Julia, why do you think it's hard for learners to switch from translating in their heads to thinking directly in English?
Well, Jason, it's mostly because we're so used to thinking in our native language. When we start learning a new language, our brains are wired to translate everything from our mother tongue into the target language, English in this case. It's like a safety net that helps us understand new words, but it actually slows down our fluency.
Exactly. This translation process, while useful at first, creates a mental barrier. When we try to speak, we're not just thinking about the words, we're also translating them in real time, which can make us feel slow and unsure when speaking. Instead of speaking directly in English, we're stuck in a translation loop.
And that's not the only reason. Another big factor is that English, like any language, has its own structures, expressions, and ways of thinking that are different from our native languages. For example, word order, idioms, and even how we describe emotions or actions can be different in English.
Right. And because of these differences, when we think in our native language and try to translate it into English, it often sounds unnatural. The sentences might not make sense, or the words might be out of order. And that can be really frustrating because, as learners, we want to sound fluent and natural, not like we're constantly translating.
Exactly. Also, thinking in English requires a lot of practice and patience. It's not something that happens overnight. You need to expose yourself to English frequently, not just in class or during study sessions, but throughout your day, through listening, reading, and speaking in English.
That's a great point, Julia. To summarize, thinking in English is hard because we rely on our native language too much. We face differences in sentence structure and expressions, and we don't practice enough in real-life contexts to make English feel like second nature. But don't worry, we're going to show you how to overcome these challenges and start thinking in English more naturally.
Now that we understand why it's challenging to think in English, let's talk about the benefits of actually making that shift. Jason, why is it so important for learners to start thinking in English rather than translating everything in their heads?
Great question, Julia. The main benefit is that it improves your fluency. When you're constantly translating, there's a delay between your thoughts and your words. But when you think directly in English, your mind can instantly connect the right words and phrases to your ideas, so speaking becomes much faster and more natural.
Exactly. Another huge benefit is that it boosts your confidence. I've noticed, as I've worked on thinking in English myself, that I no longer second-guess myself while speaking. Instead of worrying about how to translate from my native language, I can just focus on the conversation in English. It gives you the confidence to speak more freely, without hesitations or fear of mistakes.
And that confidence is key, Julia. But thinking in English also improves your listening skills. The more you practice thinking in English, the easier it will be to understand spoken English, especially in real-time conversations. If you think in English, your brain is already prepared to process the language faster, and it can recognize words and phrases more easily when you're listening.
That's a really important point, Jason. And another benefit is that it helps with pronunciation. When you're thinking in English, you're not only practicing grammar and vocabulary, but also the sound of the language. Your mind gets used to the flow of words, their rhythm and pronunciation, which makes it easier to pronounce them correctly when speaking.
Absolutely. And here's the big one: thinking in English helps you sound more like a native speaker. Native speakers don't translate. They just think in their language. And so when they speak, their speech flows naturally. The more you think in English, the closer you get to that same natural flow of communication, which is a major goal for many learners.
So, to sum it up, when you start thinking in English, you're not just improving your speaking skills, you're enhancing your overall language ability. Your fluency, confidence, listening, pronunciation, and even your ability to sound like a native speaker all improve when you make that shift. It's like unlocking a new level of language learning.
Exactly, Julia. Thinking in English gives you that full, immersive experience, which is the best way to learn. But it doesn't happen overnight. So in the next section, we're going to show you some simple and effective steps to help you get there. Now that we've covered why it's difficult to think in English and the benefits of doing so, let's move on to a step-by-step guide that will help you start thinking in English. Julia, are you ready to share some practical steps with our listeners?
Absolutely. The first step is to start with simple words and sentences. You don't need to jump straight into complex sentences or abstract thoughts. Begin by practicing basic words and short phrases. For example, when you see an object around you, like a chair or a book, simply say the word to yourself in English.
That's right. It could be something as simple as labeling objects around your home or workspace. So, when you look at your phone, think phone in English. This helps your brain get used to associating objects with their English names, without having to translate. It's a quick way to get your mind into the English mode throughout your day.
Exactly. The next step is to label your thoughts in English. Instead of thinking in your native language, start describing your thoughts in English. For example, when you're thinking about what to eat for lunch, instead of thinking, "I'm hungry, I should have pasta," try thinking, "I'm hungry, I should eat pasta." This keeps your brain active in English and makes it a natural part of your thought process.
That's a great tip. And this leads us to the third step, which is to talk to yourself in English. I know it might sound a little strange at first, but it's a really effective technique. You can practice speaking out loud about your day, your plans, or even your feelings. You don't need anyone else around for this. You can just talk to yourself.
Absolutely. Talking to yourself helps to reinforce your thoughts in English. For instance, while you're driving or walking to work, try narrating what you're doing in English. "I'm walking to the bus stop now," or "I'm getting in the car." This simple practice can help you get used to speaking English without worrying about grammar rules.
Yes. And a fourth step is to change your inner thoughts to English. This one might take some time, but it's extremely powerful. It's all about turning the internal monologue that you have in your head into English. So instead of thinking in your native language, try to change your self-talk to English. For example, instead of thinking, "I hope I don't mess up," try thinking, "I can do this," in English.
That's a great way to change your mindset and boost your confidence. And the fifth step is to describe situations in English. Think about what's happening around you and try to describe it in English. For example, if you're in a coffee shop, instead of just thinking, "I need a coffee," think, "I'm at the coffee shop and I want to get a coffee." The more you describe your environment, the easier it becomes to think in English.
Exactly, Julia. By making these small but powerful changes in how we think, we train our brains to shift from our native language to English. And remember, practice is key. You won't see results overnight, but with consistency, your mind will naturally start to think in English more often.
And don't worry if you make mistakes along the way. The goal is progress, not perfection. The more you practice, the more natural it will feel. Now, let's move on to some practical exercises to really train your brain to think in English. Now that we've covered the steps to start thinking in English, let's dive into some practical exercises that will really help you train your brain. These exercises are simple, but they can make a huge difference if you practice them regularly.
The first exercise is called shadowing. This involves listening to native speakers, whether in podcasts, videos, or conversations, and repeating what they say out loud, immediately after they say it. It could be a sentence or a short phrase. The key is to mimic their rhythm, pronunciation, and intonation as closely as possible.
That's right, Jason. Shadowing helps you improve your fluency and pronunciation because it gets your brain used to hearing and producing English in real time. You're not translating, you're listening and speaking directly in English. This will also help you develop a more natural flow in your speaking, just like native speakers.
The second exercise is mind mapping in English. Mind mapping is a great way to visualize your thoughts and ideas in English. You can start with a central idea or topic and branch out with related words, phrases, or sentences. For example, if you're learning about food, you could start with food in the center and then branch out to fruits, vegetables, drinks, etc. This helps you connect ideas and vocabulary in your mind in English without translating.
That's a fun exercise. It really helps activate your brain and make connections between words in English. Plus, it's a fantastic way to build vocabulary because you can visualize how different words are related to each other.
Another helpful exercise is journaling your thoughts in English. Spend 5 to 10 minutes each day writing down your thoughts, feelings, or experiences in English. It could be as simple as describing your day or reflecting on what you've learned. The important part is to get your thoughts out in English, even if you don't feel completely confident.
Journaling is a fantastic way to practice because it allows you to use English in a real, meaningful context. You don't have to worry about speaking perfectly. Just focus on expressing yourself in English. The more you write, the more you'll start thinking in English naturally.
Exactly, Julia. And don't forget, the key to all these exercises is consistency. The more you practice these exercises, the more your brain will adjust to thinking in English. And as your mind becomes accustomed to processing thoughts in English, your fluency will improve over time.
And finally, remember that these exercises don't need to be complicated. You can start small and build up from there. Whether it's shadowing, mind mapping, or journaling, the most important thing is that you keep practicing every day.
Exactly. So, try to incorporate these exercises into your daily routine and see how your thinking in English improves. Now, let's move on to the next part of the podcast, common mistakes that learners make when trying to think in English and how you can avoid them.
Now that we've covered practical exercises to help you think in English, let's talk about common mistakes that learners often make when trying to think in English, and more importantly, how to avoid them.
That's a great point, Julia. One of the most common mistakes is focusing too much on grammar. When we try to think in English, we often get stuck thinking about whether a sentence is grammatically perfect. But remember, your goal is to speak naturally and confidently, not to create the perfect sentence every time.
Exactly. Don't worry too much about small grammatical errors at first. The key is to practice thinking in English without constantly trying to correct every thought. Focus on getting your ideas out in English, even if the grammar isn't perfect. Over time, with more practice, the grammar will come naturally.
Another mistake is overthinking your vocabulary choices. Sometimes, learners get so focused on finding the perfect word or phrase that they freeze and don't say anything at all. If you don't know a specific word, just use a synonym or a simpler expression. The goal is to keep the conversation flowing, even if it means using simpler language at times.
Exactly, Jason. In real-life conversations, native speakers don't always use complicated words. They often use simple and clear vocabulary. If you don't know a word, try to explain it in a different way or use a synonym. This will help you communicate effectively without getting stuck.
Another common mistake is thinking too much in your native language. It's easy to slip back into our native language when we get stuck. But the more you rely on your native language, the harder it will be to make that shift to English. So, if you're thinking in your first language, try to consciously switch back to English as soon as possible.
That's a good point. The best way to break the habit of translating is to immerse yourself in English as much as you can. Surround yourself with English through media, conversations, and daily activities. The more you expose yourself to English, the easier it will become to think in it.
And finally, one big mistake is expecting instant results. Learning to think in English takes time and patience. You won't wake up one day thinking fluently in English. It's a gradual process that requires daily practice and commitment. So, don't get discouraged if it feels difficult at first.
Exactly. Stay consistent with your practice, and remember that making mistakes is part of the learning process. Each mistake is an opportunity to improve. Just keep practicing, and you'll see progress over time.
So, to summarize, avoid overthinking grammar. Don't freeze when you can't find the perfect word. Be mindful of slipping back into your native language. And remember that thinking in English is a gradual process. Keep practicing, and you'll get there.
That's right, Jason. Now let's wrap up with some final tips to help you continue on your journey of thinking in English.
We've covered a lot today, but before we finish, let's leave you with some final tips to help you continue improving your ability to think in English.
First, remember to stay consistent. As we mentioned earlier, this isn't something that happens overnight. The more you practice daily, the easier it will become to think in English. Even if you only practice for a few minutes each day, those minutes add up.
Second, immerse yourself in English. Surround yourself with the language as much as possible. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, read books, all in English. This constant exposure will help your brain start thinking in English naturally.
Third, be patient with yourself. There will be days when it feels harder than others, but that's normal. Celebrate small victories and keep going. Each time you practice, you're getting closer to fluency.
And finally, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Every mistake is an opportunity to improve. The more you speak and think in English, the more you'll learn from those mistakes and continue to grow.
Exactly. So, we challenge you to start thinking in English today. Try to incorporate the exercises and tips we've shared into your daily routine. Remember, progress is made with consistent practice.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the English Learning Podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please make sure to subscribe, like, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to leave us a comment and let us know how you're practicing thinking in English. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Keep practicing, stay patient, and we'll see you next time on the English Learning Podcast.